Welcome to the Rooted in Light podcast. I'm your host, Tuesday Rivera, and I am here today speaking with Daniela Papi-Thornton. I am so excited. You all know I have to do this, just like a little bit of bio, and then we will let Daniela speak and tell us about herself, and we will dive right in. Daniela Papi-Thornton is an educator, facilitator, and author whose work focuses on systems-led leadership, an approach to social innovation that centers on systems understanding. Some of you know that's like my other life that I do a lot of systems change work. Daniela is currently lecturing at the University of Colorado Boulder and a consultant with a range of education projects, working with organizations, foundations, and for-profit companies looking to contribute to systems change. She previously served as a lecturer at Yale School of Management, Watson Institute, and Oxford's, I don't even say that, Said Business School, where she was also the deputy director of the Skoll Center for Social Entrepreneurship. All of that is amazing, of course, but I want to say how I know Daniela, which is I met her through a cohort program she was in called Positive Deviance. And when I say that they were some of the smartest folks doing the coolest work I've ever met, I mean it. And Daniela was one of them. And she reached out and we've stayed in touch. And she reached out last year talking about the divine feminine, about rematriation, around systems leadership, and how all of these different fields might be sort of doing the same thing, but calling it different stuff. And so I in addition to being incredibly interested, was like, please come on the podcast. Let's talk about all the different things you're doing. Let's talk about where you're coming from. And so, Daniela, with that introduction, what did I miss? What else would you tell people to know about you?
Thank you. Thank you, Tuesday. I'm grateful. That was beautiful. Yeah, I just put I haven't had a website, like a personal website before, and
Uh-huh.
literally today just launched danielapapi.com.
Oh,
And
great.
which is, part of it's like being willing to put your face and be like, look, this thing is about me, right? Because
Yeah.
I've always been like, well, it's not about me, but there's something
Mm,
about like, oh, when you can say, oh, this is me and this is the unique stuff that I bring into the world. And if it aligns with
I
you,
love it.
hey, come hang out. And if it doesn't, that's fine too, right?
Right.
And so in
Right.
doing my bio, I I included, there's obviously bajillions of people who've shaped me, but I wrote the without positive deviance, specifically the Will Fuller program, was such a huge piece of shaping me. So I'm so grateful I met you there as well. Um, Things to add about me. Yeah, I just say I work at the intersection of social innovation and systems, or that's what I have been working in for the last, um, let's say 15 plus years. And then now it's the same work, just with a
Mm.
slightly different reframe, which is it brings in the sacred feminine, but it's really just like the circularity versus the linearity, right? It's that
Ah.
my work for the last 10 years was how do we move away from this idea of the entrepreneur as hero, as the only path to give people when they're like, I want to do something good in the world, right? How do we give them like a broader view of like, we're teaching them how to solve problems, but we're not teaching them how to understand problems, right? So, how do we give them that systems understanding work? And now I'm realizing, and we can get into that on this if we like, that there's this like intersection with the circularity, being nature, being the sacred feminine, being whatever you want to call it, that is missing. And it's not just missing in our lives, it's missing in our work and how we teach, all of that. And so that's my interest right now.
I love it. There's so much there. But first, I want to ask, was there a moment or an incident or something that kind of flipped you to be like, whoa, we're missing something here. We're
Mm.
missing perhaps the sacred or like you said, whatever you want to call it. But what happened for you that you found this gap?
Well, I would say it's like there's like the slow burn pathway and the punctuated story, and I'll tell both
Okay,
those really quick.
please,
Slow burn
please.
pathway is more like many things. A good friend, Shauna, who's an intuitive, right? At that time, I would have been like, what does that even mean? Is that, right?
Right. Right.
Um, studying with Miranda Pretty Owl, who, um, she's Lakota, but she's like, I'm not teaching you Lakota ways. I'm teaching you indigenous ways of connecting to yourself, each other, and the planet. And every single one of you has indigenous roots to people who knew how to connect and sit in circle and connect to land and each other and your higher selves in ways that we all have, like so many of us have forgotten, right? And so there's all these different humans who have, positive deviance, like who have shaped my pathway of recognizing that there's more to this story than just like what our brain can just think about. There's more to being open to the interconnections, right? That to me is like you could call it a systems lens. You're like opening to this wider view of how we're all connected, which we're all figuring out through science or intuition. We're like, oh, the trees actually communicate. Oh, who knew, right? Humans, we share energy fields, right? We're proving that in scientific ways, which indigenous communities and healers who haven't lost those traditions have known, right? And then
Right.
punctuated, I would say one, there's a few, but one is I co-authored a book. I sent a draft of it to my friend Sophie McLaren, who teaches mindfulness, meditation, neuroscience at Oxford and beyond. And I was quoting her, and she responded with, "Oh, you're calling in the sacred feminine in this work, right?"
Mm.
And
Oh,
like
uh-huh.
I wasn't using that term. I did have a like a piece in there about there is this is another punctuated point. Um, Karen Joseph, who is co-founder of Reconciliation Canada, and I were on a panel a few years ago, and she said, in my culture, we have two types of time. We have linear time, we have circular time. I believe at the time she's called it masculine time and feminine time. And and saying that we in linear time and masculine time, we need masculine leadership. In circular time, we need feminine leadership, and not being about gender. This is about our inner yin and yang, our inner
Yeah,
ways of
right.
being, right? And
Right.
so this idea, that really struck me, right? That we are now in circular time, right? Circular time is
Mm.
time where things change a lot, because you're no longer like, look, there's a mountain. It's really freaking far away. Ooh, how are we going to get there? We could go faster. We could be more efficient. We could,
Right.
like that's it.
Right.
Oh, there's a tree. We got to go around it. That's it. You see the thing. You're like, that's how we teach. I have an MBA. I taught on MBA programs. We teach that kind of be efficient, get there.
Right.
Circular time is you're on a boat, everyone else is on a boat, you're hanging out in the ocean, you don't even know where shore is, the things are moving around, you like have to get there together, right? And you have to use that like intuition, that you have to you things are going to change quickly, right? And so there's this type of leadership that is relational,
Mhm.
intuitive, interconnected, system aware, complexity aware, that is needed for these times, right? So what does it look
100%.
like? Yeah, right. And so when Sophie brought that piece in, she's like, "You're calling the sacred feminine." Then I was like, deep dive into part of this, and I was like, "Oh, it's the same." Like she would often
Mm.
say her practice is mindfulness meditation presence. So she would say presence is the sacred feminine. Also, I mean, Sophie, don't mean to put words in your mouth, so, but like a lot of her, that's like a lot of her work is related to that. And I'm like, oh, it's systems, right? Because that systems awareness, well, that's the sacred feminine. But then when I started talking to people, I'm like, the consciousness people are like, the consciousness, that's it. It's consciousness. The regenerative people, it's like, oh, the regenerative
Right.
aspect. And I was like, oh, we are all talking about a similar thing, which is
Mm.
reconnecting with ourselves or our higher selves in the consciousness world, each other, and nature in
Right. Yes,
old
yeah.
ways in modern times so that we can stop causing more problems through our linear action. right?
Right. So okay, I hear you kind of called in the sacred feminine without having that label or even maybe even needing that label, right? So, but how did that land? I mean, like I read in your bio, you lecture at Yale, you lecture at Oxford. How does that kind of more feminine and again, we're not talking gender, we're talking
No.
energetic, we're talking circularity, we're talking relationality, we're talking, like, holding the whole versus, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. The
focus
action,
and
like this. Yeah.
right. Some
Mhm.
people call it, like, warrior, midwife, sword,
Mm.
chalice, all of those things. How did that land? How are you bringing it in? How explicit are you able to be?
Yeah. Beautiful. Um, okay. So, like I said, it's perfect timing. I put this website out. It's been like almost
Yay!
done for like months and just kind of like sitting there like,
Aw.
oh, am I okay? Right. But in it, I mean, I can read it anyway. We're not going to read it right now. But it essentially is saying this, exactly what you asked. It's
Mm.
saying I've been teaching in these old stoic masculine
Yeah.
institutions that are like, they'll let a little bit in of
Yeah.
maybe neuroscience and mindfulness. They'll let a
Right.
little bit in of regenerative, right? They'll talk about that, but like
Mhm.
sacred feminine, no, we can't go there, right? There's
Right?
certain things. I mean, I would say consciousness is even starting to go get into the conversation. But so I have been, kind of do I put this out into the world? And my husband, who is much more mainstream,
Yeah.
was like, this feels a little bit, are you okay with doing this? Um, and I was like, then I realized I'm like, no, that because you feel that way is more reason why I need to. Because
Right.
that's like, even I start a lot of my meetings, I call in my well and wise ancestors. Like I'm running
Yes.
an educator group and I start the meetings by calling in my well and wise ancestors for two reasons. One is because I want to do that anyway, and it's important to me. But I could
Mhm.
obviously do it 1 minute before the call starts, right? And I've
Right.
decided I do it 1 minute after the call starts as part of my contribution
Mm,
to shifting
mhm.
this system. Because if you see that that's what I'm doing, and I give you permission to do your thing, whether it's that or something else, that is how you connect, great, right? Like, oh, it's kind of like do a lot of teaching in Canada, I do a lot of work in Canada.
Oh,
And
okay.
every meeting in Canada kind of, starts with this with a land acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Um, and we had an educator gathering a few weeks ago, and we had a indigenous teacher join us, and we had this kind of like heated moment about some other stuff. We were like in this conversation, and she's like, I just want to let you know that I hate land acknowledgments. And she's like, why do I want to start every meeting with you telling me that you took my land? Like, right, you took my
Yeah.
people's
Yeah,
land, right?
yeah.
And it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
such a beautiful reminder too, that it's like all of these things, it's like we 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 can't get stuck in the way, right? The way that is right or wrong, right?
Right.
It feels
Right.
good to some people. It doesn't feel good to some people, right?
100%.
When I
Yep.
was working at Yale, we had a situation where we had all these global leaders come in. This was like, you know, I think it's probably like 8 years ago, 7 years ago. So pronouns were a thing, but just like starting out wasn't like everywhere.
Uh-huh.
And we had someone say, so there were, it was all people from around the world, and someone said, "Can you say your pronouns?" And someone asked, "What does that even mean?" And someone explained, and then someone else was like, "So you want people to start out in the first 2 minutes of introducing themselves to say the thing that in some of our countries would get them killed?" Right?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like,
Uh-huh.
okay, just this reminder that like there's
Yes.
nuance all the time, right? And so
All of the time.
my fear that the sacred feminine would like scare people away, or me opening with a prayer calling in my ancestors might not land for someone, is like, oh my gosh, we need to, like, I'm just going to own it as this is my thing, this is
Yeah.
my way. I'm not asking you to do this, I'm not telling you there's a right way, that you have to do this or you can't do that. I'm saying, tell me if it doesn't sit right for you, or if there's,
Right.
but like, here's me, right? And that piece, yeah, that's part, I think, that I'm stepping into. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to get more into my own feminine and invite others in through that process too. I don't even remember what your question was. I
Well,
think I
I
answered it.
love where we went, which was I you totally did, and yes, you totally did, and I love where you went because I think it's so important. I think it's so much part of, and I wanna link personal and systemic transformation here in a moment, but I think there's actually something really, really important about, you stepping forward. "This is how it is for me." And that's just it's like an offer and an invitation. It's not a request, it's not an edict, it's not saying this is how it should go. I think, part of the cohort I run, which is called Luminosity, we talk about becoming self-illumined so that others become lit up by what we're doing. Like, it's not that like, "Oh, I'm gonna shine my light on you." It's like, me being lit up is actually gonna allow you to see that possibility. I suppose
Beautiful.
in living systems, we could talk about morphic fields and things like, if I'm able to do something, then you are as well.
Mm,
But I actually think it's a little more simple than that. I think it's like when Daniela goes to a meeting and opens it bravely, whatever that looks like.
yeah.
Other people can go to a meeting and open it bravely, or can talk to their boss bravely, or can sit in front of an altar bravely, or can have a conversation with their mother they've never had for the first time. Like, there's something actually about people fully inhabiting themselves and what's
Yeah.
real for them that I think is just huge permission giving. For me, it feels like an intervention in itself. It's not an
Yes.
intervention to bringing like calling in everyone's well and wise ancestors. That's not the intervention. The
No.
intervention
Yeah.
is to bring more of yourself.
Yes. I love that. Yes, that is it. And so that I do remember what your question was now of like, am I going to probably be teaching at these old Stoic institutions forever into the future? No. Like I'm not actually in numerology and different things they talk about this 9-year cycle ending right now,
Yeah.
right? So we're not only
Mhm.
ending the year but ending this kind of 9-year cycle and pattern. And I do feel like for me, that's also, for me, it's my oldest child is 9 and a bit right now, right? So like this 9 years has been, we literally moved to Boulder 9 years ago. I had a kid 9 years ago. My life was totally different in this last 9 years than it was in all the time before. And now I'm like, I'm actually ending this, like, I teach in universities, right? So I was like, oh, that's how she introduced me. And that's perfect because I've given you my old bio. So I was like, oh, that isn't going to be me. I'm just like, hearing it helped me
I
realize, like,
love
that's
it.
not me. But I'm still working with educators. Well,
Mm.
can I tell you a little bit about System Change
Please.
Educators Unite? Okay,
Please
great.
do. Yes.
So we launched this thing, System period change, period, educators, period, unite, periods. Periods are important because it's not system change educators, right? Um, it's people working in systems understanding, like Tuesday, you work in systems, a lot of, people who work in social innovation, social entrepreneurship, whatever change means for them, maybe internal change management in a company, and educators. So, educators who care about one or both of those areas. And this idea of unite being like, oh my gosh, we're in such a polarized world right now. We are in such polarity. Educators are a key node into bridging some of that. And in my view, systems and complexity understanding is a key component to being able to hold nuance and being able to reunite in divides. And so, my kind of like, I want to say subversive, but that's not the right word. My personal goal of this is the contribution I want to make in the world is like, we are in times of complexity. I want to empower educators to bring more of themselves, right? And to bring
Mhm.
these
Mhm.
pieces. That's not necessarily why they're signing up. Some of them are signing up because we're offering like super cool stuff. Like you are going to come
Yeah.
and run a session, which I'm so excited about. Last week we had a session with Nital and Emily on better online facilitation. So some of it is systemsy, some of it is just like
Uh-huh.
tools to thrive in these times, right? And then I already mentioned Sophie McLaren. She's going to be one of our first speakers in the new year, bringing in a mindfulness meditation practice, which is like a gift to the educators,
Right.
systems change people, whoever is there. But it's also hopefully a tool that they can say, oh, like this is there. Maybe I can incorporate it. I even want to share it, right?
Yeah.
And last piece is we had this gathering. Anna Burney of the School of System Change and I had an online call. We put it out in the world, short notice. We had 100 people sign up, exactly 100, which I loved because it was
Oh
like
my gosh.
10 minutes before, and I was like, we have 99 people. And then like right before someone said, I was like, hey. And the same thing happened with System Change Educators Unite. When I sent out the you're in, you've signed up, send it to exactly 100 people at the moment of not even knowing that that was happening, which anyway. So that it was like, okay, this is good work. But Anna and I hosted this call and we called it the State of Systems Change Education. And when people came, part of the people were like, oh, we need a definition for that. And actually, I felt kind of the opposite. I was like, there's definitions like arising. And there were three kind of groups of people. One were people who wanted to teach others the skill sets of understanding systems, contributing to system change, whatever that looks like, right? So it's like tools and models and frameworks, vocabulary. Fine. Other people were like, we are changing the system. So like our piece of educational offering in the world is changing our school, our university, our education system, our town, whatever, right? In some way, right? These people were like, I want skills and I want to share resources and I want to share my curricula and get feedback and new case studies. These people were like, I'm freaking lonely because this is hard work. And I'm in these institutions and people are actually in some ways trying to beat me down because they don't want to change it, or they're benefiting from it, or it just seems like too hard and they don't want, so these people are lonely and they need to like hang out with each other and be like, and then there's the people, and a lot of people are trying, doing all three, which is like realizing this is a fractal. You don't have a narcissist running a country unless we're a narcissistic society, right? We don't have an education system that is linear unless we are linear, right? So it's there like, how do we embody this, right? It's like my contribution is to embody the future that I want to see in these changes, right? And so the idea is like, okay, how do we help support people in whatever part of this that they're in? And they might be here, but actually benefit from that, or they might be here and benefit from that. And so that's where we're at.
And you're bringing cool people in. Thank you. I'll name myself among them to talk with folks about this. And I remember when you and I talked about what I would bring in, people who are familiar with my work. I'm going to bring in the shared work model, the 5 stances. And I said, well, I'm happy to do that, but I want to talk about like the sacred that's underneath those stances, right?
Yes.
Like we could talk about this orientation to just because that's where I'm getting more and more explicit in my work is like, and so we could talk about these are, the stances to hold and move a group together over time. But there actually is a sacred or a spiritual component. There is a worldview or an orientation underneath it that actually says the linear, the action is insufficient, right?
Yes.
There's something that masculine piece, which is needed, is also insufficient. And this piece around coming into what is yours to do, what is wanting to happen, what is being called forth, right? Like, how do we like pull ourselves like into the future based on like longing, need, desire, and a future that's calling us versus like, I'm going to act to meet this future, right?
Yes.
It feels like, so that's where I lit up is like, what is the possibility to begin to explicitly bring these concepts together?
Yes. Beautiful. Danella Meadows is famous like systems educator, MIT, taught at Dartmouth, died too early. And she has that piece on leverage points, right? She has like her 12 things of leverage. Right? And so I've like taught it in classes and stuff before, right? And for a while I used to, when we get to like the end, so her second to last one is changing the paradigm, right? I view that as changing the mental models, the way people think about things, right? Like the paradigm they're in around how we view the world working, right? And obviously, like if we can, changing mental models is hard, changing our own, changing others, of course. But when we can get that, I always say to my students, I was like, if everyone in the world cared as much about whatever it is that you care about, we wouldn't have to worry about changing the policy, changing the law, changing the rules, whatever, changing all this stuff because everyone would want to shift those things too, right? Well, her last one is about I forget her wording, but it's something like the ability to see that you're even in a paradigm, right? Like or to like,
Right.
and I remember I
Right.
used to like skip over it because I'm like, I'm not really sure what she means. And I would like go quick, but now I'm like, oh, this is it. This is it. Is like the
I love it.
once you have changed, once you've had a big shift, right? Like this shift of me seeing the world instead of just like in more of the masculine linear view of systems, right? Systems mapping, put a lot of loops together, make a
Right.
beautiful thing. To me, that's still very linearized in some
It
way because
is,
you're like trying
absolutely.
to get to the right answer, right? Once I can
Yes.
shift that and see, oh, this is actually the feminine, once you can shift a big shift in your mind, then you know the rest of it's all made up. Like it's all made
Yeah,
up.
that's
All of it,
right.
right?
That's right. It's
And
all
so,
made up.
yeah. And then you get to be like, what do I want to make up now? Right? Like,
Right.
what do I want to believe
100%.
today? And that's, I think, the big thing that I'm noticing too. There's a lot of people operating in the world through kind of what you just talked about. You and I are making this shift as humans who have worked, I think, often in this more like in businesses, in education, in these worldviews where we've had to be like, oh, this is me teaching in a um formal, or what's the word I want to that I'm trying to come up with here, like professional, that's the word, professional, setting,
Right.
right? Oh, these sacred
Yeah.
pieces, those are not professional, right? We're making the shift to be like, these are missing and these are
Yeah.
necessary, right? And I think we're not the only ones, right? Who are making that shift. And part of it is like, oh, realizing like our worldview made up that this was
Yes.
professional and this was not. Okay,
Right.
let's make it up differently now, right? Like because, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My teacher um talks about like our imagination, our ability to dream, our ability to kind of aspire, but specifically our imagination is the same exact energy that the divine feminine uses to create the world. And so like
Mm.
as she creates the world, we create our world, right? Like she
Yes,
creates
yes.
universes, we create our world. And so uh, what she says is it's our responsibility to imagine. It's actually our
Yes.
responsibility
Beautiful.
to bring this sacred in because like you said, it's all made up.
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't we make up something that is beautiful, that is true, that is inclusive, serves all? Like
Yeah.
why wouldn't we choose like that's what we're going to make up?
Yeah. I went to Notre Dame for my undergrad, which
Mhm.
non-Americans are always like, Notre Dame, Notre Dame, right? That's a
I
very
know.
ridiculous name that we call it that.
It
Anyway,
really is.
but I was like, oh, I went to like Our Lady, right? And of course, in
Uh-huh.
Christianity, they're often talking about like Mother Mary, right?
Right.
But Mary
Of
Magdalene, it
course.
could also be like the like, right?
For
The
example.
for example, right? And a required class at Notre Dame was you had to take I can't remember if there's a specific. I think you did have to take like a theology 101, but you could take like you had to take religion classes. And I remember, is it the ontological argument? Which is this? Is it that? I'm gonna get this wrong. So anyway, but like I
It's all right.
remember at one point like learning that like, okay, you could either, it's like the same thing that you could choose to believe in God in any one religion, however they
Uh-huh.
define it, and just be like, whoa, I might go to heaven if I believe this, so like why not, right? There's not a harm, but then there's like a kind of in a similar argument. I could just say the fact that there was 100 people who signed up for both of these things, literally exactly 100, I could view that as coincidence. And in one world, it's just
Right.
coincidence, right? Or I can view it as like, you know what, this is helping me see where I'm in alignment, right? And
Right.
and
Right. Beautiful.
there's not
Beautiful.
like um in the same way, you're not like trying to prove if God's there or not there, but it's like I know that if
Right.
I believe in, like I ask for support and signs, and I believe in those support and signs, and I trust my intuition, because part of this, like what Christianity took away and every major religion took away when they destroyed the feminine, was they put God outside of us instead of
That's
inside
right.
of us, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And that piece of being really connected, like there are times in my life, positive deviance is one of them, where there's been like something that gets put in front of me and I just am like, that is mine. Like that is something I'm supposed to do. That is my next step. Like 100% knowing. Like it's like this is what the universe is asking me to do next, right? And once again, I can say it's like coincidence, or I can say that I created it, but there's like no harm, and there's a ton, for me, a lot of benefit to asking for and seeing those alignments as my intuition, my higher self, spirit, source, God, if that's the word you want to use, helping me get into alignment, right? And then I know when I have those moments that are like, here is alignment, when I override those moments or when I'm really in
Uh,
trouble, right?
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because
That's
it's
actually what I was going to ask you because I think that people listening, I mean, I think many of us can look at like, oh, okay, there was that time I definitely listened to my inner voice and it was the right thing but we still kind of have trouble believing it or leaning on it or leaning into it. And I'm curious if there's anything you can share about where you got the courage to like listen to those places of alignment. I mean, I would suggest that many of us are like walking by places of alignment 2, 3, 17 times a day and we just don't tune in or we don't trust like that's for us. And so I'm curious what you know about following that inner voice wherever
Mm,
it comes from.
thank you. Okay. Couple things. One, I want to talk about the Unstuck Club and how it relates to that. So I'm going to get to that in a second. Um, Julian, if you're listening, I hope it's okay to share this story, and I'm trying to tune in and find out if I think it is. But okay, couple pieces. One is these are muscles. These are like literally like like I like your thing of bringing more of yourself into the world. That's actually the exact word I was using for a friend recently, where I was like, "You're trying to get us to do this sound healing, but you're talking about it in a way that's very like neuroscience and science, but actually there's like a piece of you that wants to bring in the more like, I mean, I know woo can be used in a negative way, but like I'm using it in a positive way here of like that wants to bring in more of you but you're not sharing that because you're afraid. I was like, dude, bring it in, right? And so I'm now watching him, like there's so many more of his posts and stuff where it's like, oh, you're bringing more of you, right? So part of it is muscle memory of just like building that. I'm going to try it out. I'm going to bring a little more of me. And of course, that's all. What also happens is the reason people aren't bringing more of themselves is they had a point where they did and they got shut down, right? And so, how to like healing those pieces, looking at those. If it was like your parents being like, "Stop shining your light, you're too bright," they didn't use that word. They would use the words like, "You're too loud," or "It's not time for your opinion here," or whatever it was, right? But like going back, so some of my work right now, I do coaching, but I use a tool called Remind. Eric Bizance, who was on our Positive Deviance cohort too, and April Adams, they have this incredible tool, and it's based on lots of different things that people know about, and like EMDR, and we don't need to get into
Mm,
all the concepts, but essentially, it's an audio track that you get to listen to for 15 minutes, and your ego brain is what I like to call it. Like that brain is like, if I squeeze this hand, like this tells me to squeeze my left hand. This beep tells me to squeeze my right hand. So I'm like kind of competing to like get this thing right. Right. That's our linear side.
uh-huh.
And the subconscious gets
Right.
to hear these things that are like, hey, let that go. Right. And so a lot of my work is I also bringing in these pieces of how do we let go of those intense emotions, those other things that held you back from
Right.
bringing that
Right.
light in, right? So the answer
Right.
is sometimes I'm using tools, I'm learning from people. We'll talk about the
Great.
Unstuck Club that I'm launching that's bringing those things to people. And then it's like, um, I think this is part of where the connection to spirit is. It's like there is something of what is my job to do? What is mine to do here? And I feel like I think probably all of our job to do here is to bring more of our light,
Yeah.
right? To
I
bring more
agree.
of ourselves, right?
Yep.
But I definitely feel more like I now know when I'm contorting or hiding. I still do it
Uh-huh.
a lot. I
Yeah,
still do
yeah.
it a lot, you know?
Yeah.
It's not like I'm going around just being me all the time, right? But I now know what it feels like to bring more of myself versus not. And then it doesn't feel as good. I'm like, oh, like me going into 2026, this new year, this new 9-year cycle, it's like, I want to work with amazing humans like you only. I don't want to be
Yeah.
working with
Yeah.
energy that doesn't feel aligned. I call
Yep.
that the
I
energy
agree.
economy. The energy economy,
Mm.
we used to have just commodities. Then we had products and services, like we would sell coffee beans, then we would roast them. Then we would go to a coffee shop, right? And there's a whatever his name is, Gilmore's book on the experience economy, right? So 15, 20 years
Uh-huh.
ago, they were writing about this idea. You go to Starbucks, you're no longer buying just the coffee and the service of it. You're buying the music and the atmosphere and the similarity in Tokyo to New York, wherever you walking into a Starbucks, right? We are now in the energy economy. That's what I think of it as, is like, I am no longer just buying you as my coach or you as my sound healer or you as my teacher or whatever, where like, and if you're all selling the same thing, I am buying the energy that I feel being in your energy field, whether that's virtual or real. And I am now making decisions, right? So therefore, the question becomes, how are you doing energy hygiene? How are you teaching this to your teams? Because it doesn't matter if you've given the people the right PowerPoint when they're doing the sales pitch. People are buying the energy of that person. So how are you hiring for energy? How are you training for energy? So anyway, that's something I'm super interested in. And once again, I'm totally off topic. Oh yeah, I know where I'm going. Unstuck Club. So it's muscle memory, it's practice, it's asking for support to do more of it. It's being willing to you lose some people along the way, right? If you've contorted for so long to be this other version of yourself that you needed to be to get liked, uncontorting sometimes might change relationships because the other person is like, wait, oh, it does, right? And another thing I learned from my friend Shauna, which I'm super grateful for, is I do the little prayer I did before we started today, right? It was like, most benevolent beings, I asked for the most benevolent outcome, and we can go into the wider version of it. But it's me trusting and saying, I'm asking for support that this action I'm taking is for the highest and greatest good of all concerned.
That's right.
I'm
That's right.
asking for that and then trusting that. Because you know what? If I lose a friend in the process who isn't liking this more
Yeah.
aligned, what I would say is a more aligned version of me, then that friendship was meant to help me actually get in more alignment, to like
Yeah.
see, ooh, I have to make a choice here. I can either keep contorting
Uh-huh.
or I can really do what I said I asked the universe to do, which is bring me more in alignment. Okay, here I go.
Right.
Right. And I'm going to tell you about the Unstuck Club in a second, but first, is this any other follow ups here? Am I going in a
Yeah, well,
direction that feels
I
useful?
definitely want to hear about the Unstuck Club, so let's don't lose that. But the thing that you just said that really struck me was when as we come into alignment, right?
Hmm.
I think there can often be, um, like you said, loss of relationships, loss of identity, uh, loss of well cherished ideas, right? So there can be like a lot of
A loss,
shedding that
grief.
come and a lot of grief and loss
Yeah,
that
I
comes.
agree.
And so that I always feel like, like so this work is, I mean, it sounds great. Like, let's get into alignment. Let's connect with our higher
Right.
folks and our ancestors. But like it can be grueling and
Yeah.
sad and lonely sometimes. It can also be blissful and delightful and like an energy rush at times. So there's
Yeah.
something there about like it is also complex, right? Like
Yes.
this moving into ourselves. And I also think I think there's a lot of, like you said, I think there's something like, oh, thank you for, if women leave relationships, thank you for helping me come more into
Yeah.
alignment.
Yeah.
And there's like, it's not like, oh, I've outgrown you, or it's just like, it can be full of love.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
I also think sometimes when we lose people, when we're moving into alignment, it is a cascade effect. Something happens for them that may or may not have anything to do with me, but it actually frees them to
Yes.
not contort back to me, right?
Yes.
So, like, if I'm
Yes.
contorted to stay in this relationship, I'm willing to believe that maybe they had to contort too. And
Yes.
so maybe unlocking actually is an unlocking for both of us.
Yes.
It
If
doesn't
it's not
have
an
to be.
alignment for you, it's not an alignment for them.
Right. And so, like, that to me then feels like a gift. It's not so much of like, oh, I outgrew or I'm not for them anymore. It's like actually the alignment is taking us apart.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And I'm going to choose to believe that is for their best and highest good
Yeah.
and not just mine. So it's just like there's something here around like keeping people in, right? Like maybe not in our orbit or in our daily life, but like still keeping them into how I think about the world and how I think about relations. And even if that relationship is gone, it is still served and is still serving and might be serving us both just separately too.
Yes. Beautiful. Um, this book just showed up at my house. Like I was, oh, we don't need to get into all the details, but like a woman was staying in her house, was kind of more like an energy person, and she was over for dinner, and my kids are like, "Oh, let's read a book before bed," and they like come over with this book, and you know when you would like. It was from the same guy who wrote Conversations with God. I remember forgetting his name,
Okay.
but I'm like, where I don't want to, when you have to like ad lib when you read a book because you're like, I don't know what this book is, right?
Yeah,
Where
right.
did this come from? How is this book in our house? So I was like, I tell them, I'm like, how about we read this book tomorrow, right? Because I'm like, I want to read it first to
Right.
understand what I'm about to read to you, right?
Yes.
Randomly at our house, like it just shows up. Okay, so we read something else. They go to bed. I get this book out. What is it called? It's called The Little Soul and the Sun. Okay,
Oh,
so
wow.
start reading the book, and I was like, oh my goodness, right? So go on a hike the next morning with this friend who's about to lead this like cacao experience, and I was like, your people need this book because the book is about this
Mm.
little soul who's up in heaven and says, God, I am wondering how, like, what am I? And it's like, oh, you're the light. Well, if how do I know I'm the light? And then the guy's like, well, it's kind of hard. I get that because you are, it's like being one little light in the sun. Everybody's the light. So it's hard to
Uh-huh.
notice that you're the light because everyone's the
Ah.
light, right? And then they're like, but I want to know about I want to know what it feels like to be the light. And he's like, what part do you want to know? And it's like, I forget if it's like maybe he says like forgiveness or whatever or something, right? So he's like wants to feel what it feels like to be like generous
Mm.
and these different things. And so and he's like, well, the tricky thing is there's nothing to forgive. So it's really hard
Mm.
to do that. And so this other
Wow.
soul comes and is like, I'll help you get to feel that. And like the soul's like, oh my God, will you?
Mm.
You promise you'll help me do that? So amazing. What can I give you in return? And the other soul's like, well, you'll just have to remember who I am. You have to remember that I'm the light because when I do this, I'm going to
Uh-huh.
forget. Right. And so then they go
Mm.
down to earth. Right. And then it's like they're going to play that out where there was a soul contract for one little
Wow.
soul to
Right.
harm the other one so that there could be something to forgive so that that soul could forgive. Right. And then our job is to remember that that other one was the light. Right. So that person that is no
Ah,
longer, it's like, the most beautiful book,
yeah.
right? So wait, at the end of my story is that I
Sounds
tell her this
amazing.
story. I tell her, I was like, you need to get this book. We go on this walk. We get back to my house. There is an Amazon package at my door of another copy of this book
What?
that I was like, universe, this is a little too far. I'm feeling a little scared. Go into my Amazon. I've like somehow ordered this at like 3 a.m. I was not awake at 3 a.m., right? I ordered this book at 3 a.m. It's like 10 a.m. It's at my door. So I'm
Oh
like,
my
oh, the
goodness.
universe wants you to take this to your cacao thing. Like, go. I don't even know where the book is
Wow.
now. It's gone. But anyway, so
I love that.
that
Oh,
is such a beautiful, I love that idea of like, and it's that's how you get into forgiveness and gratitude and all those beautiful things that we get to feel in life is to know, oh, this person
yeah.
I was contorting, it feels out of alignment, but I'm not angry. I'm grateful.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. It just feels like an antidote to so much of the kind of moving from naming troubling dynamics to naming troubling people. I feel you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, I think there's something actually about like, yeah, it can be out of alignment. It can actually hurt. It can be traumatic even to you. And we can move in the world in a different way. I'm curious. Okay, but I don't want to stop you. You mentioned a story from Julian and you mentioned the Unstuck Club. And I know we only
Okay.
have just a few, but
Yeah.
I want to make
And it's
sure.
up to you. I have a few more minutes if you need it, but the story from Julian was one where it's a big wider story, but there was a component of this indigenous elder who he was trying to call this man, and anyway, this indigenous elder was with his entire family, all in a car, driving from Calgary to California. I think the story was that they were going to a powwow. They're in the car, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point he says, "Oh, we got to turn the car around and wait for a phone call. Like, we need to go home and wait for a phone call," right? And I was like that, and the reason it was
Wow.
so striking for me was that I had this
Yeah.
intuition the week before. We were going to Panama visiting friends, and I'd had this thing, we're supposed to leave a day early, right? But my old self uses it as like my intuition as fear. Something bad's gonna happen if we don't. Oh no, da da da. It was expensive to move it the day before. Da da da. I didn't move it. I didn't move it, right? And everything was okay. I mean, I did get sick. Different things happened, but it wasn't like the end of the world, right? Didn't miss a call. Then I go and I hear the story and I'm like, oh shoot, what phone call did I miss? Like, what phone call did I miss? Like, I had an appointment that I was supposed to be at. And it was like this big nudge of like, change your darn flight, go one day early. And I didn't. And the end of the
Huh.
world didn't happen, but
Right.
maybe I missed a phone call, right? And it was
Right.
really powerful. I mean, it seems like a tiny story and it might not land for you, but it lands for you. Maybe
Oh,
you're wanting
so
this
good.
message right now, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. And the Unstuck Club also just launched this. It's like starts in January, but I literally it's on my website. I just put it out today. I want you to be one of the people Tuesday. I just sent you information
Yeah,
about it.
I got the email.
Okay, good. I want you to be one of the people offering stuff. But the idea is okay, my friend Ray first started something called the Unstuck Club, drop-in peer coaching. Loved it, love Rafe. He was winding it down. And so he generously was like, take it. And there's a part of me that was like, I don't feel stuck. Like, I'm not, like, unstuck feels kind of like this negative thing. But it's really, to me, it's like, it's unstuck to thrive. And the idea is like, you have to get stuck. Like, you hit these edges of your growth, whether that's like, being comfortable with abundance and finance, whether that's just like being a parent and knowing how to navigate, whether it's like opening the fridge and knowing what to cook and feeling overwhelmed, or like paying your taxes, or what do you, we won't get into all that. I was going to say whether you believe you should. So, or whatever it is, like your health and your health care, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there are so many amazing healers, teachers, educators, gurus, coaches, whatever, who can support in all these things. And so many of them have these like big programs, like a year-long program, this or that. And I was like, what would it look like to take all these humans like you who have these amazing things, and so many of the people who are already offering are people like you who I've already been studying with and learning with, but to like share these with people in these microdoses of like, so the idea is Unstuck Club is once a month. We still have the peer drop-in coaching. Let's like get unstuck together, learn. But then once or twice a month, there's someone bringing something, right? So it might be an experience, a sound healing experience. It might be a new skill that you're learning, like, if AI feels scary to you, like 3 things you need to know, right? Or if we're going to do a co-cooking class with this woman, Katerina, who we're going to like all open our fridge together and cook, and she's going to teach us the like basics of flavor and how, right? So fun, right? Or whatever that might be for you. We have a woman who's going to teach us a bit about feng shui and like give us just like a couple tips of like unlocking the energy in our home, right? And so we can all taste test these things. And then if you want to deep dive with these people, right? Take a deep dive once every few months with someone that's like really aligned. So Unstuck Club, we have a call on Wednesday, which I mean, by the time this come out, it'll already happen. But it's officially launching on, I think it's January 17th.
Okay.
And excited. Yeah, check it out. It's unstuckclub.com or danielapapi.com, and you can find it all there. And I also just have a Sacred Systems card deck that you can find there too, that we're just putting out into the world too. So, yeah.
Okay, well, this is what I wanted to ask is how can people find you?
Yeah.
DanielaPapi.com will have information about the Systems Change Educators Unite.
Yep. So Systems Change Educators Unite. You can go straight there. Or if you go to DanielaPapi.com, Daniela has only one L, like I said, DanielaPapi.com. You can see the Sacred Systems card deck. You can see the Unstuck Club. You can see Systems Change Educators Unite. It's all there.
Great. So we'll put all this up on the show notes. People will have
Amazing.
access to it. And my final question as we close today is there a practice you might recommend to people, something you use to get in touch with this sacred, that helps you navigate these times that you might just want to share with folks?
Sure. Too many things. One I've already mentioned, but I studied with Richard Strozzi at the Strozzi Institute, did my coaching training there. And we're not going to get all into it now, but I would, I really appreciate their work. But one of the practices of grounding, you ground in your dignity line, your length, and your width, your depth, is like finding a place. Someone that recommended like a hallway, walk between your car and your house, like train pathway that you walk to, just like something that you walk on regularly. And that becomes your like alignment space, even if it's like literally 10 seconds, right? And that every time you walk that space, you realign. Where am I off? Where am I like leaning forward in life, rushing? Where am I? Where am I holding tension? Where am I not like standing fully in my dignity? Whatever
Great.
that is, right? So like one
Great.
is like a space in your house, in your life, in your street, whatever. And then the other was what I already mentioned, which is like asking for help and
Mhm.
trusting that it is there. Because
Wow.
then when
Great.
things come and they don't feel great, it's like you've asked for help. The help is there. Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe this is the path forward, or maybe it's like helping you get to tune into your intuition. Am I supposed to do something different here? Right. And that's how we hone it. So
Yeah. I
thank you.
love it. I love it, asking for help and then receiving the help that's given or
Yeah.
believing that help is there. I love it.
Yeah.
That's perfect. And I also I'm like, "Oh, I know exactly where I will have my little tunnel of
Mm.
alignment in my house." I
I
think that's
love it.
fantastic. Thank you so, so much for being here. It's just as always, just amazing to chat with you. And I learn a ton and I get deepened.
And
And so
I
I'm
learned a
sure.
ton from you. So grateful, Tuesday. So, so
Yeah.
grateful always.
Yeah.
And I want to say the big T truths, which I don't know if everyone here is not, like, hopefully you'll share that with people. That is like really, I use it all the time and so grateful for
Mm.
that teaching of yours as well.
Great. Well, that makes me want to do a podcast on the big T truths. So we're gonna just
Let's do
hold that,
it.
and yeah, let's plan to do that. All right, Daniela,
Love
thank you
it.
so so much.
Thank you
And
too.
everyone, you know what? If you like this podcast, of course, would love you to rate and review. But mostly, if there's something that you like, pass on the episode to people, and so that they can hear it. We just love for more people to be listening, and yeah. So. Thank you, everyone. Until next time, bye-bye.
Thank you.